The gunshot that echoed through the canyon that morning in May of 1877 wasn't what brought Cole Brennan into the small Arizona Territory town of Copper Ridge, but the woman with the haunted eyes he saw stumbling out of the general store certainly made him stay. Cole had been riding for 3 weeks straight, making his way from a cattle drive in Texas to meet his brother in California when his horse threw a shoe just outside the dusty settlement. The town wasn't much to look at, just a single dirt road lined with weathered buildings that seemed to sag under the relentless desert sun. But it had a blacksmith, and that was all Cole needed. Or so he thought. He was leading his mare, Sadie, toward the smithy when he saw her. She was young, probably around 22 or 23, with dark auburn hair pulled back in a simple bun. Her calico dress was faded but clean, and she carried a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. What caught his attention wasn't her appearance, though she was undeniably pretty. It was the way she moved, carefully, deliberately, like every step caused pain she was trying desperately to hide. Cole had been a cowboy for 8 years, since he was 18, and he had seen plenty of suffering in his time. He knew the look of someone carrying invisible wounds. As she passed by him on the wooden sidewalk, a gust of wind caught her shawl and pulled it back from her shoulders. That's when he saw them, dark purple bruises climbing up her forearm like twisted vines, partially hidden by the long sleeves she had pushed down as quickly as the wind had exposed them. Their eyes met for just a moment. Hers were a striking green, beautiful and terrified all at once. She quickly adjusted her shawl and hurried past him, her head down. Cole stood there, frozen, his hand still gripping Sadie's reins. Something in his chest tightened, a familiar anger mixed with something else he couldn't quite name. "You planning to stand there all day, or you want me to fix that shoe?" Cole turned to see a burly man with a leather apron standing in the doorway of the smithy, arms crossed and eyebrow raised. Cole nodded and led Sadie over, but his mind was elsewhere. "That woman who just passed," Cole said, trying to sound casual as the blacksmith examined Sadie's hoof. She looked hurt. The blacksmith's expression darkened. He glanced around before speaking in a lower voice. "That's Eleanor Hastings. Well, Eleanor Garrett now, married Martin Garrett about 6 months back. He owns the saloon." The man spat on the ground. "If you know what's good for you, stranger, you will keep your observations to yourself. Martin Garrett is not a man to cross." Cole felt his jaw tighten, and everyone just lets him beat his wife. "Ain't nobody's business but theirs," the blacksmith said, but there was shame in his voice. "Sheriff is Martin's cousin. We are a small town. People got to make a living, and Martin controls most of the trade around here. It ain't right, but that's how it is." Cole didn't respond. He had never been good at accepting how things were when they were wrong. It had gotten him into trouble more times than he could count, but it was also why he could still look at himself in the mirror each morning. The blacksmith finished with Sadie within the hour. Cole paid him and walked his horse to the small boarding house at the end of the street. He told himself he was just tired from the road, that he needed a decent meal and a real bed before continuing his journey. But deep down, he knew that wasn't the whole truth. He couldn't shake the image of those frightened green eyes, or the bruises that told a story of violence and suffering. That evening, Cole sat in the dining room of the boarding house, a modest establishment run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson. She was a kind woman in her 50s who seemed grateful for the company and the business. As she served him a plate of roast chicken and potatoes, Cole asked about the town, steering the conversation carefully toward what he really wanted to know. "Eleanor Garrett, Mrs." Patterson said softly when he finally mentioned the name. She glanced toward the kitchen to make sure they were alone. "That poor girl. She came here from St. Louis about a year ago. Her parents died of fever and she had no other family. She worked as a seamstress, rented a room from me actually. She was such a sweet thing, always had a kind word for everyone." "What happened?" Cole asked, though he suspected he already knew. Mrs. Patterson sighed heavily. Martin Garrett happened. He took a shine to her, started courting her. She was hesitant at first, I could tell, but he was charming when he wanted to be. He promised her security, a home of her own. She was all alone in the world, and I think she convinced herself it was a good match. The older woman's voice dropped even lower. The bruises started showing up about 2 months after the wedding. She stopped coming by to visit. When I see her in town, she barely meets my eyes. I tried to talk to her once, but she just said everything was fine and hurried away. Cole felt anger building in his chest like a fire catching dry timber. And nobody does anything? "What can we do?" Mrs. Patterson asked, and there were tears in her eyes. "Martin is powerful here. He has money and connections. The law won't help her, and if any of us try to intervene, we will just make things worse for Alina. At least that is what we tell ourselves so we can sleep at night." Cole didn't sleep well that night. He lay in the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Alina Garrett and the bruises she tried to hide. He thought about his own mother, who had died when he was young, and how his father had cherished her, treated her like she was the most precious thing in the world. He thought about his sister, Sarah, who was married to a good man in Denver, someone who would rather cut off his own arm than raise it against her. By the time the sun rose, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and pink, Cole had made his decision. He couldn't just ride away and pretend he hadn't seen what he saw. He didn't have a plan, not exactly, but he had a sense of purpose that felt as solid as the ground beneath his feet. He spent the morning walking around town, getting a feel for the place and its rhythms. Copper Ridge was indeed small, maybe 200 people at most. The saloon, a 2-story building with a faded sign that read Garrett's Palace, dominated the center of town. Cole could see living quarters on the 2nd floor, curtains drawn against the morning light. Around midday, he saw Alina again. She emerged from a side door of the saloon carrying a basket, heading toward the general store. Cole followed at a distance, careful not to be obvious. He watched as she bought supplies, speaking softly to the shopkeeper, barely audible. When she left the store, Cole was waiting outside, positioned so their paths would naturally cross. "Ma'am," he said, tipping his hat politely. "I apologize for the intrusion, but I wanted to make sure you were all right. I saw you yesterday, and you seemed to be in some discomfort." Alina's eyes widened and fear flashed across her face. "I am fine," she said quickly, clutching her basket tighter. "Thank you for your concern, but I really must be going." "Please," Cole said gently, stepping slightly closer but careful not to crowd her. "I know I am a stranger, but I have seen those kinds of bruises before. If someone is hurting you, there are people who can help. You don't have to live like this." For a moment, Alina's carefully constructed mask slipped. He saw the pain, the loneliness, the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, someone actually cared. But then the fear returned, stronger than before. "You need to leave me alone," she whispered urgently. "If Martin sees you talking to me, if he thinks, please just go, you will only make things worse." Before Cole could respond, a voice cut through the air like a whip crack. "Alina, get over here." Cole turned to see a man standing on the porch of the saloon. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in expensive clothes that looked out of place in the dusty town. His face was handsome in a hard way, with cold blue eyes that assessed Cole with instant hostility. Alina's face went pale. "I have to go," she breathed, and hurried across the street toward her husband. Cole watched as Martin Garrett grabbed Alina's arm, the same arm where Cole had seen the bruises. Even from a distance, Cole could see her wince. Martin said something to her in a low, harsh voice, then looked back at Cole with a challenging stare before pulling Alina inside. Cole's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Every instinct told him to march over there and knock Martin Garrett into next week. but that would only make things worse for a leaner. He needed to be smarter about this. That evening, Cole went to the saloon. It was busy, filled with cowboys, miners, and townsmen drinking and gambling. Cole found a spot at the bar and ordered a whiskey, taking in his surroundings. Martin Garrett was working the room, shaking hands and laughing loudly. He had the practiced charm of a politician or a snake oil salesman. "You are new in town," Martin said, appearing beside Cole with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Martin Garrett. "I own this establishment." "Cole Brennan," Cole replied, shaking the offered hand with just enough pressure to make a point. "Just passing through." "Is that so?" Martin's smile tightened slightly. "Funny, I heard you were asking questions about my wife earlier." Cole met his gaze steadily. "I was concerned. She seemed hurt." "My wife is clumsy," Martin said, his voice pleasant but with an edge like a knife. "She takes tumbles, but I appreciate your concern, Mr. Brennan. Now, since you are just passing through, I assume you will be moving on soon." It was a threat wrapped in civility. Cole drained his whiskey and set the glass down carefully. "I will leave when I am ready," he said evenly. "Not before." The tension between them was palpable. Several conversations around them had stopped, people sensing the confrontation brewing. Martin's smile vanished. "Then enjoy your stay," he said coldly, "but I would advise you to mind your own business." Accidents happen in towns like this, especially to strangers who don't know when to keep their noses out of other people's affairs. Cole didn't respond, just held Martin's stare until the other man turned and walked away. Cole knew he had just made an enemy, but he didn't care. He had never been good at backing down from bullies. Over the next few days, Cole found reasons to stay in Copper Ridge. He helped Mrs. Patterson fix her front porch. He played cards with some of the local cowboys and learned more about the town's dynamics. Everyone confirmed what he already suspected. Martin Garrett was a cruel man who ruled through fear and influence, and a leaner was trapped. Cole caught glimpses of a leaner around town. Each time she looked more withdrawn, more defeated. Once he saw her with a fresh bruise on her cheek, poorly concealed with powder. Their eyes met across the street, and he saw something in her expression that broke his heart, a silent plea mixed with hopelessness. On the 6th day, things came to a head. Cole was at the livery stable, checking on Sadie, when he heard raised voices coming from behind the building. He recognized a leaner's voice, frightened and pleading, and Martin's, angry and threatening. Cole moved quickly, rounding the corner to find Martin with a leaner backed against the wall, his hand raised. Without thinking, Cole grabbed Martin's wrist, stopping the blow inches from a leaner's face. "That is enough," Cole said, his voice deadly calm. Martin spun around, fury contorting his features. "You son of a—" He swung at Cole with his free hand, but Cole had been in enough fights to see it coming. He ducked and drove his fist into Martin's gut, doubling him over. "Leaner, go," Cole said, not taking his eyes off Martin. "Go to Mrs. Patterson's boarding house, now." Leaner hesitated, eyes wide with shock and fear. "He will kill you," she whispered. "I can handle myself. Go." Leaner ran. Martin straightened up, gasping for air, his face purple with rage. "You are dead," he snarled. "Do you hear me? Dead." "I have heard that before," Cole replied. "Here is what's going to happen, Garrett. You are not going to touch your wife again. In fact, you are going to leave her alone completely. If I hear that you have so much as looked at her wrong, I will come back and finish what we started here." Martin laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You stupid fool. You think you can just ride into my town and tell me what to do? I own this place. I own these people. And that woman is my property, bought and paid for with a wedding ring." "She is a human being, not property," Cole said, his voice hard. "And if you touch her again, I swear on my mother's grave you will regret it." "Sheriff," Martin suddenly shouted. "Sheriff Dawson." Cole saw a man with a badge hurrying over, hand on his gun. This must be Martin's cousin. Cole assessed the situation quickly. He was outnumbered and outgunned on hostile territory. "This man assaulted me, Sheriff," Martin said, playing the victim perfectly. "I want him arrested." Sheriff Dawson looked between them, his loyalties clearly conflicted but ultimately predetermined. "I am going to have to ask you to come with me, Mr. Brennan." Cole weighed his options. He could fight, but that would just end with him in a cell or worse, and Alina would be left defenseless. "All right," he said, raising his hands. "But this isn't over, Garrett." "Oh, I think it is," Martin said with a triumphant smirk. Cole spent that night in a cell, staring at the barred window and cursing his impulsiveness. He had acted on emotion instead of strategy, and now he was locked up while Alina was potentially in more danger than before. He had to think, had to come up with a plan. Around midnight, he heard a soft voice outside his cell window. "Mr. Brennan." He stood quickly and looked out to see Alina standing in the shadows, her face partially illuminated by moonlight. "What are you doing here?" he asked urgently. "If Martin finds out—" "He is passed out drunk at the saloon," she said quickly. "I waited until I was sure, Mr. Brennan, you shouldn't have done what you did. You should have just left town." "I couldn't," Cole said simply. "I couldn't just ride away knowing what he was doing to you." Tears glistened in Alina's eyes. "No one has ever," her voice broke, "no one has ever stood up for me before, not like that." "Everyone should have stood up for you," Cole said firmly. "What he is doing is wrong, Alina. You know that, don't you?" She nodded slowly, wiping at her tears. "I know, but I have nowhere to go, no money, no family." "I thought I could endure it, that maybe if I was more careful, if I didn't make him angry." She laughed bitterly. "But everything makes him angry. I can never be good enough." "Listen to me," Cole said, gripping the bars. "This isn't about you being good enough. Martin Garrett is a broken, cruel man, and nothing you do or don't do will change that. But you don't have to stay with him. We can figure something out." "They will never let you out of this cell," Alina said. "Martin has the sheriff in his pocket." "They are going to run you out of town or worse." Cole had suspected as much. "Do you know where the keys are?" Alina's eyes widened. "You want me to break you out?" "I want you to save yourself," Cole said, "and I can't help you do that from in here." Alina bit her lip, fear and hope warring on her face. Finally, she nodded. "The keys are in the sheriff's desk. He is at the saloon with Martin. Everyone is there tonight, big poker game. But Mr. Brennan, if we do this, if I leave with you, Martin will come after us. He won't ever let me go. Then we make sure we get far enough away that he can't find us," Cole said. "Alina, I know I am just a stranger. You have no reason to trust me. But I give you my word as a man of honor that I will protect you. No one will ever lay a hand on you again, not while I am breathing." The intensity in his voice, the absolute certainty, seemed to reach something deep inside Alina. For the first time since he had met her, he saw a spark of strength in her eyes, a flicker of the woman she must have been before Martin Garrett broke her spirit. "All right," she said. "Wait here." Cole almost laughed at the instruction since he had no choice, but he understood what she meant. He watched her disappear into the darkness, his heart pounding. This was reckless, dangerous, and could end badly for both of them. But doing nothing was no longer an option. 10 minutes that felt like hours passed before Alina returned with the keys. Her hands shook as she unlocked the cell door. Cole stepped out, and for a moment they just stood there, looking at each other in the dim light filtering through the jail's windows. "Thank you," Cole said softly. "Don't thank me yet," Alina replied. "We need to get our things and get out of town before anyone notices." They moved quickly and quietly through the darkened streets. Cole retrieved his belongings from the boarding house, leaving payment for Mrs. Patterson with a brief note of explanation. Alina had almost nothing to collect except a small bag she had hidden at the boarding house earlier, as if some part of her had been preparing for this moment. At the livery stable, Cole saddled Sadie and bought a second horse, a sturdy mare that the stable hand assured him was reliable. The young man looked at them with understanding eyes and didn't ask questions. Cole suspected he wasn't the only one in town who despised Martin Garrett. They rode out of Copper Ridge under a sky full of stars, heading north toward the mountains. Cole knew they needed distance, and they needed it fast. When Martin discovered Alina was gone, he would be furious, and his rage would be terrible. They rode hard for several hours until Cole judged they were far enough away to rest briefly. They stopped near a stream and Cole helped Alina down from her horse. She was trembling, whether from cold, fear, or exhaustion he couldn't tell. "Are you all right?" he asked. Alina looked back in the direction they had come, as if expecting to see pursuers already on their trail. "I can't believe I did that," she whispered. "I can't believe I just left." "You did the right thing," Cole assured her. "You were incredibly brave." "I was terrified," she admitted. "I still am." "Being brave doesn't mean not being afraid," Cole said. "It means doing what needs to be done even when you are scared." They rested for an hour, letting the horses drink and graze. Cole kept watch, his rifle across his lap, alert for any signs of pursuit. Alina sat nearby, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the water. "Where are we going?" she finally asked. "North to New Mexico territory. I have a friend who runs a ranch near Santa Fe. He will give us shelter while we figure out our next move." "Us?" Alina looked at him questioningly. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." Cole considered the question. He wasn't entirely sure of the answer himself. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said finally. "And because when I looked at you, I saw someone who needed help. I couldn't just walk away from that." "Most people would have," Alina said quietly. "Most people did." "Then most people are cowards," Cole replied bluntly, "and I never had much use for cowards." They rode on through the night and into the next day, stopping only briefly to rest the horses. Cole could see Alina was exhausted, but she didn't complain, just kept riding with determined silence. He found himself admiring her strength. She had endured so much, yet she hadn't broken, not completely. That spark was still there, buried but alive. On the second night, they made a proper camp in a sheltered canyon. Cole built a small fire and made coffee while Alina tended to the horses, who she had grown surprisingly comfortable with. They ate beans and hardtack, not much of a meal, but it was warm and filling. "Tell me about yourself," Alina said as they sat by the fire. "Who are you, Cole Brennan?" Cole smiled slightly. "Not much to tell. I am just a cowboy, been working cattle since I was 18. My father was a rancher in Texas, but he died 5 years back. Left the ranch to my older brother who sold it and moved to California. I have been drifting since then, taking work where I can find it." "No wife, no family?" Alina asked. "I have a sister in Denver, like I mentioned earlier in my thoughts. We write when we can. As for a wife," Cole shook his head, "never seemed to be the right time or the right woman. The life I lead isn't exactly suited for family." "What kind of life do you want?" Alina asked, and there was genuine curiosity in her voice. Cole stared into the fire, thinking, "Honestly, I would like to have a place of my own someday. Nothing fancy, just a small ranch where I can raise horses and cattle. A home." He glanced at her. "What about you? What did you want before?" "Before Martin," Alina finished. She pulled her knees up to her chest, resting her chin on them. "I wanted to be a teacher. When I was a girl in St. Louis, I loved learning, loved books. I thought I would teach children, help them see the world beyond their circumstances." She laughed sadly. "Instead, I became a seamstress and then a battered wife. Not quite the life I imagined." "It is not too late," Cole said firmly. "You are young, you can still have the life you want." "Can I?" Alina looked at him with those haunted eyes. "Martin will never stop looking for me. He won't let me go, not because he loves me, but because I am his possession. He will see this as theft, as a challenge to his pride. Then we will deal with him when the time comes, Cole said. But Alina, you can't live your life in fear of what he might do. You have to start living for yourself. They fell silent, listening to the crackle of the fire and the distant howl of a coyote. Cole found himself watching Alina in the firelight, seeing past the bruises and the fear to the woman underneath. She was beautiful, yes, but more than that, she was strong and intelligent. He felt something stirring in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Over the next week, as they traveled north through the rugged landscape of the Arizona and New Mexico territories, Cole and Alina began to truly know each other. They talked during the long hours of riding, sharing stories and dreams. Alina told him about growing up in St. Louis, about her parents who had been kind but poor, about the books she had loved and the places she had dreamed of seeing. Cole told her about his childhood in Texas, about learning to ride and rope from his father, about the brother he rarely saw and the sister he missed. They laughed together, tentatively at first, as if Alina had forgotten how. Cole made it his mission to coax smiles from her, telling funny stories about his various misadventures as a cowboy. Slowly, he watched the tension leave her shoulders, watched the fear in her eyes begin to fade, replaced by something else, something like hope. One evening, as they made camp beside a shallow river, Alina went to wash up while Cole prepared dinner. When she returned, her hair was down, falling in damp waves past her shoulders. She had changed into a clean dress, and without the shadows of exhaustion and fear, she looked younger, softer. "You look different," Cole said before he could stop himself. Alina touched her hair self-consciously. "Different good or different bad?" "Different beautiful," Cole said honestly, then felt his face heat. "I mean, not that you weren't before, I just—" He trailed off, feeling like an awkward schoolboy. Alina smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed her entire face. "Thank you, Cole. That is the kindest thing anyone has said to me in a very long time." They ate dinner in companionable silence, but Cole was acutely aware of her presence in a way he hadn't been before. When their hands accidentally touched reaching for the coffee pot, he felt a jolt run through him. He saw color rise in Alina's cheeks, and he wondered if she felt it too. That night, Cole lay in his bedroll, staring up at the stars, and admitted to himself what he had been trying to deny. He was falling for Alina Garrett. It was foolish and complicated, and the timing was terrible, but his heart didn't seem to care about any of that. He just knew that when he looked at her, he saw his future, saw the home he had been searching for without even realizing it. They reached his friend's ranch outside Santa Fe 13 days after leaving Copper Ridge. Jack Morrison was a grizzled former cowboy who had saved his money and bought a modest spread where he raised horses. He was in his 50s, unmarried, and welcomed them without question when Cole explained the situation. "You can stay as long as you need," Jack said, showing them to a small guest cabin on his property. "Anyone who stands up to a bully like that is all right in my book." The cabin was simple but clean, with 2 separate rooms. Alina looked around with wonder, as if she couldn't believe this safe haven was real. "Thank you," she said to Jack, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much." "No thanks needed, ma'am," Jack replied kindly. "Just glad you are safe now." Over the following weeks, Cole and Alina settled into a routine at the ranch. Cole worked alongside Jack, helping with the horses and general maintenance, earning their keep. Alina helped with cooking and mending, and in her spare time, she began to read again, devouring the small library Jack had accumulated over the years. Cole watched her transform day by day. The bruises faded, and with them, some of the shadows in her eyes. She smiled more often, laughed freely. She started offering opinions and ideas, her sharp mind emerging from the prison Martin had tried to confine it to. She was blossoming, becoming the woman she was meant to be. And Cole fell more in love with her with each passing day. He loved the way she hummed while she worked, loved how she talked to the horses in a soft, gentle voice, loved the way her eyes lit up when she discovered a book she hadn't read. He loved her strength and her kindness, her courage and her compassion, but he didn't say anything. She had just escaped a terrible marriage, had just started to heal. The last thing she needed was another man making demands on her heart. So Cole kept his feelings to himself, content just to be near her, to see her happy. One evening in July, 2 months after they had arrived at the ranch, Cole was working in the barn when a leaner came to find him. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. "Cole, can we talk?" she asked. Something in her tone made his heart skip. "Of course, what is it?" Alina twisted her hands nervously. "I have been thinking about my situation. About Martin and the marriage. Jack told me there is a lawyer in Santa Fe who might be able to help me get a divorce. New Mexico has different laws than Arizona, and since there was abuse, there might be grounds." "That is a great idea," Cole said, hope rising in his chest. "Do you want me to go with you?" "Yes," Alina said. "But that is not all I wanted to talk about." She took a deep breath. "Cole, these past 2 months have been the happiest of my life. You saved me, not just from Martin, but from giving up on myself. You have been so kind and patient, never pushing, never demanding anything from me." "Alina," Cole started, but she held up a hand. "Please, let me finish. I know I am still legally married, I know my life is complicated and messy. But I need you to know that I have developed feelings for you, strong feelings. I think about you constantly. When I wake up, my first thought is whether I will see you at breakfast. When I read, I find myself wanting to share every interesting passage with you. When I laugh, it is usually because of something you said or did." She looked up at him, her green eyes shining. "I am falling in love with you, Cole Brennan, and I needed to tell you, even if you don't feel the same way." Cole felt like his heart might burst from his chest. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides and cupped her face gently in his hands. "Alina, I have been in love with you since the moment you smiled at me by the campfire. I have been holding back because I didn't want to pressure you, didn't want you to feel like you owed me anything." "I don't feel pressured," Alina said, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. "I feel free. For the first time in my life, I feel free to choose, and I choose you." Cole kissed her then, soft and tender, pouring all his love and longing into that single perfect moment. Alina kissed him back, her arms wrapping around his neck, and Cole felt like he had finally found what he had been searching for his entire life. They went to Santa Fe the next week and met with a lawyer named Samuel Green. He listened to Alina's story with grave attention and examined the marriage certificate she had managed to take with her. "The situation is complex," Green admitted. "Arizona and New Mexico territories have different jurisdictions, which works in your favor. Additionally, the documented abuse, if we can prove it, provides strong grounds for dissolution. There are also laws about abandonment and cruelty that we can invoke." "How long will it take?" Cole asked, holding Alina's hand. "Several months, possibly a year," Green said. "But I believe we can win this case, especially if your husband doesn't contest it. If he does..." The lawyer paused. "We may need witnesses, evidence, it could get complicated." "I don't care how complicated it gets," Alina said firmly. "I want to be free of him legally. I want to be able to move forward with my life." The process began. Papers were filed, notices were sent. Cole and Alina waited, continuing their life at the ranch, their relationship deepening with each passing day. They went on long rides together, talked for hours about everything and nothing, dreamed about the future they might build together. Jack watched them with approval. "Never seen 2 people more suited for each other," he told Cole one evening. "You are good for her and she is good for you." Cole couldn't argue with that. A leaner made him want to be better, to build something lasting. He started thinking seriously about buying his own land, maybe near Jack's ranch, starting that horse ranch he had always dreamed of. But their peace was shattered one afternoon in late August. Cole was in the corral working with a young stallion when Jack came running from the house, his face grave. "Cole, we have got trouble." Man just rode in asking questions about a woman matching a leaner's description, said he was looking for his wife who had been kidnapped. Cole's blood ran cold. Martin. Don't know if it was him personally, but someone is looking. I told the man I hadn't seen anyone matching that description, but I don't know if he believed me. Cole's mind raced. They had known this might happen, but it was still a shock. "Where is a leaner?" "In the cabin. I sent word to her to stay inside." Cole ran to the cabin, finding a leaner standing by the window, her face pale. "He found us," she whispered. "We don't know that for sure," Cole said, though his gut told him otherwise. "But we need to be prepared. I won't let him take you, Alina, I promised you that." Alina turned to him and he saw fear but also determination. "I won't go back. I would rather die than go back to him." "It is not going to come to that," Cole said firmly. He pulled her into his arms. "We will figure this out, together." That evening, Martin Garrett himself rode up to the ranch with two men Cole didn't recognize. Jack met them in the yard, with Cole standing slightly behind him, hand near his gun. Martin looked older than Cole remembered, his face haggard and his eyes wild. "I know she is here," he said without preamble. "I have been tracking you for weeks. Alina is my wife and I want her back. Mrs. Garrett is under my protection," Jack said calmly, "and she has made it clear she doesn't wish to return to you." "I don't care what she wishes," Martin snarled. "She is my property, legally bound to me. If you don't produce her immediately, I will have the law on you for kidnapping and harboring a fugitive." "The lady isn't anyone's property," Cole said, stepping forward. "And she has filed for divorce in New Mexico territory on grounds of cruelty and abuse. You have no legal standing here." Martin's face turned purple with rage. I should have killed you when I had the chance. You have poisoned her against me, turned her into a disobedient whore." Cole's hand moved to his gun, but Jack put a restraining hand on his arm. "Mr. Garrett, I am going to ask you to leave my property. If you have legal claims, you can make them through the proper channels, but you are not taking anyone from this ranch by force." One of the men with Martin spoke up. "We don't want trouble, but Mr. Garrett has rights. The woman is his wife." "And she has rights too," a new voice said. Everyone turned to see Alina standing on the porch of the cabin, her chin raised defiantly. "I have the right not to be beaten. I have the right not to live in fear. I have the right to leave a marriage that was destroying me." Martin took a step toward her, but Cole moved to block his path. "Don't even think about it," Cole said quietly, his hand now resting on his gun. "Alina, stop this nonsense," Martin said, trying to sound reasonable but failing. "You are confused. That man has filled your head with lies. Come home with me and we will forget this ever happened." "No," Alina said, and her voice was strong and clear. "I am never coming back to you, Martin. You hurt me, you demeaned me, you tried to break me, but I survived, and now I am filing for divorce. Our marriage is over." Martin's mask of civility cracked completely. "You ungrateful witch. I gave you everything, a home, a name, security, and this is how you repay me, by running off with some drifter. You gave me nothing but pain," Alina replied, "and Cole is worth 1,000 of you. He has shown me what a real man is, someone who protects instead of hurts, who lifts up instead of tears down." Martin made a move toward the porch, but Cole drew his gun in one smooth motion, pointing it directly at Martin's chest. "That is far enough, Garrett." The two men with Martin tensed, hands moving toward their own weapons. The situation was a hair's breadth from violence. Jack also drew his gun, and suddenly everyone was armed and ready. "This doesn't have to end badly," Jack said calmly. "You are outnumbered, Mr. Garrett, and you are on my land. Turn around, ride back to Arizona, and let the lawyers handle this." "I am not leaving without my wife," Martin insisted stubbornly. "Then you are not leaving at all," Cole said coldly. They stood in tense standoff, nobody moving. Finally, one of Martin's companions spoke up. "Boss, maybe we should go. We can get the law involved, do this proper." Martin looked around, assessing his options. He was outnumbered and outgunned. With visible effort, he reined in his rage. "Fine," he spat, "but this isn't over. I will have her back or I will see both of you dead." He pointed at Cole. "You have made an enemy for life, Brennan." "I will take my chances," Cole replied. Martin and his men rode off, leaving a cloud of dust and tension in their wake. As soon as they were out of sight, Alina's strength seemed to leave her, and she sank down onto the porch steps, trembling. Cole holstered his gun and went to her, pulling her into his arms. "It is all right," he murmured. "You were so brave. I am so proud of you." "He is not going to give up," Alina said, her voice shaking. "You heard him. He will keep coming." "Then we will keep fighting," Cole said firmly. "We will get that divorce and we will build our life together. I am not letting him win, Alina. Not now, not ever." Over the following weeks, the situation became increasingly complicated. Martin did indeed involve the law, filing claims in both Arizona and New Mexico territories. Samuel Green worked tirelessly on Alina's behalf, gathering evidence and witnesses. Mrs. Patterson from Copper Ridge provided a statement about Alina's condition during the marriage. The doctor who had once treated Alina for a broken rib came forward. Even the blacksmith, despite his fear of Martin, gave testimony. The case dragged on through the fall. Martin tried several more times to approach Alina, always stopped by Cole or Jack. He hired lawyers who argued that Alina had been kidnapped and brainwashed. He claimed Cole was a criminal who had stolen his wife. But the evidence of abuse was overwhelming, and slowly, the legal tide began to turn in Alina's favor. During this time, Cole and Alina's relationship continued to deepen. Despite the stress of the legal battle, they found joy in each other. Cole taught Alina to shoot, wanting her to be able to protect herself. Alina helped Cole with his reading, which had always been a struggle for him. They took long walks in the evening, talking about the ranch they would build together, the life they would create. One night in October, under a sky full of stars, Cole got down on one knee. "I know we are still waiting for the divorce to be final," he said, "but I want you to know my intentions are honorable and my commitment is real. Alina, when you are free, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing you what love is supposed to be?" Alina was crying and smiling at the same time. "Yes," she said. "Yes, 1,000 times yes. I would be honored to be your wife." Cole slipped a simple silver ring on her finger, a promise of the future they would share. They kissed under the stars, and Cole thought his heart might burst with happiness. The divorce was finally granted in December of 1877, 7 months after they had fled Copper Ridge. The judge ruled in Alina's favor, citing overwhelming evidence of cruelty and abuse. The marriage was dissolved, and Alina was legally free. When the news arrived, Alina broke down crying, not from sadness but from relief. "It is really over," she kept saying. "I am really free." They were married 2 weeks later in Santa Fe, with Jack as witness and Samuel Green and his wife in attendance. It was a small ceremony, but it was perfect. Alina wore a simple white dress she had sewn herself, and Cole wore his best clothes, his hair slicked back and his boots polished. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Cole kissed his bride with all the love in his heart, and Alina kissed him back, tears of joy streaming down her face. They spent their wedding night in a hotel in Santa Fe, and for the first time, Alina experienced what it meant to be with a man who loved her, who was gentle and patient, who cared about her pleasure as much as his own. It was a revelation, a healing, a new beginning. They returned to Jack's ranch, but Cole immediately began looking for land of their own. In February of 1878, they found the perfect spot, 50 acres of beautiful land with a stream running through it, about 10 miles from Jack's place. The property had a small cabin that needed work, but Cole could see the potential. With Jack's help and a loan from a Santa Fe bank, Cole purchased the land. They spent the spring and summer of 1878 building their ranch. Cole and Jack constructed a barn and expanded the cabin, adding another room and a proper kitchen. Eleanor planted a garden and made curtains and quilts, turning the rustic cabin into a warm, welcoming home. They bought a small herd of horses and some cattle. It was hard work, but satisfying. Cole had never been happier, waking up each morning next to the woman he loved, spending his days building something permanent and meaningful, falling asleep each night in Eleanor's arms. In September, Eleanor told him she was pregnant. Cole picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing with joy. Their son was born in May of 1879, a healthy baby boy with Eleanor's green eyes and Cole's dark hair. They named him Samuel, after the lawyer who had helped them, with the middle name Jack, honoring the friend who had given them shelter. Cole held his son for the first time and felt tears running down his face. "I promise you," he whispered to the baby, "I will be the best father I can be. I will protect you and your mother with everything I have. You will grow up knowing what love looks like, what a real family is." Eleanor watched from the bed, exhausted but glowing. "He is perfect," she said softly. "Just like his mother," Cole replied, leaning down to kiss her forehead. They spent that summer as a new family, learning the rhythms of parenthood. Cole was a natural father, patient and loving, changing diapers and walking the floor with Samuel when he cried at night. Eleanor bloomed as a mother, singing lullabies and telling stories, her face radiant with happiness. Word reached them eventually that Martin Garrett had left Copper Ridge, his reputation destroyed by the divorce proceedings and the revelation of his abuse. The saloon had been sold to pay his debts. Some said he had gone to California, others that he had headed east. Cole didn't care where he was as long as he stayed away from Eleanor and their family. Their ranch prospered. Cole proved to have a gift for training horses, and soon people from all over the territory were coming to buy his stock. Eleanor managed their finances with a sharp mind for numbers that surprised even her. They hired a hand to help with the work, a young man named Tom who was hardworking and respectful. In the spring of 1881, Eleanor gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Rose. She had Cole's dark eyes and Eleanor's delicate features. Samuel, now almost 2, was fascinated by his baby sister, always wanting to help care for her. Life settled into a comfortable pattern. Cole would work the ranch during the day, often with Samuel toddling after him, imitating everything his father did. Eleanor managed the household, tended her ever-expanding garden, and started teaching reading lessons to some of the children from neighboring ranches, fulfilling her old dream of being a teacher in her own way. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch they had built, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Samuel would play with his wooden toys while Rose nursed or slept in Eleanor's arms. Cole would sit with his arm around Eleanor, content in a way he had never imagined possible. "Do you ever think about that night in Copper Ridge?" Eleanor asked one evening in the summer of 1882. "When you saw my bruises?" "Sometimes," Cole admitted, "it feels like a lifetime ago." "It was," Eleanor said softly. "I was a different person then, broken and afraid. I didn't think I deserved anything better." "And now?" Cole asked, though he knew the answer. Eleanor smiled, that radiant smile that still made his heart skip. "Now I know exactly what I deserve. I deserve love and respect and partnership. I deserve to be happy. And I am, Cole, I am so incredibly happy." So am I, Cole said, pulling her closer. You and these children, this ranch, this life we have built together. It is everything I ever wanted and more than I ever dreamed I could have. Their third child, another son they named James, was born in 1883. Their family was complete, their home filled with laughter and love. Samuel grew into a bright, curious boy who loved the horses as much as his father did. Rose was gentle and kind, always trying to take care of her younger brother. James was a happy baby with a ready smile and an adventurous spirit. In the spring of 1884, Jack Morrison passed away peacefully in his sleep. Cole and Alina mourned the loss of their dear friend, the man who had given them sanctuary when they needed it most. They inherited his ranch, as Jack had no living relatives and had left everything to them in his will. They combined the two properties, creating one of the most successful horse ranches in New Mexico territory. As the years passed, their success grew. Cole's reputation as a horseman spread far and wide. Alina's reading lessons expanded into a proper school that met in a room they built onto their barn, teaching children from all the surrounding ranches. They employed several hands, treated fairly and paid well, creating a community built on respect and hard work. Samuel grew into a fine young man, skilled with horses and cattle, with his father's strong sense of honor and his mother's sharp mind. Rose became a talented artist, painting the beautiful landscape around them, her work eventually selling in Santa Fe shops. James proved to be a natural cowboy, fearless and skilled, with a gift for making people laugh. On their 10th wedding anniversary in December of 1887, Cole and Alina stood on their porch, looking out over the ranch they had built together. Snow was falling gently, covering everything in pristine white. Their children were inside, Samuel reading to his younger siblings by the fire. 10 years, Alina said wonderingly. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, sometimes like forever. Best 10 years of my life, Cole said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Mine too, Alina agreed. She turned in his arms to face him. You know what I think about sometimes. What would have happened if you had just ridden past that day in Copper Ridge, if you had decided it wasn't your problem? I couldn't have, Cole said simply. The moment I saw you, saw those bruises, something in my heart recognized you. I didn't know it then, but I think I fell in love with you in that instant. Not with who you were, but with who I could see you had the potential to be if someone just gave you a chance. You did more than give me a chance, Alina said, tears glistening in her eyes even after all these years. You gave me my life back. You showed me what love really means. You kept your promise, Cole. You said no one would ever lay a hand on me again, and they haven't. You have protected me, cherished me, built this beautiful life with me. And I will keep protecting you and cherishing you for the rest of my days, Cole promised. Until my last breath, you and our children will be my whole world. They kissed, the snow falling around them, the warm light from their home spilling out onto the porch. Inside, they could hear their children laughing at something Samuel had read. It was the sound of happiness, of safety, of love. Cole had been a drifter once, moving from place to place with no real home. But he had found his home in Alina, in the family they created, in the life they built together. She had been broken once, trapped in a nightmare with no way out. But she had found her strength, her voice, her freedom. Together they had healed each other. Together they had created something beautiful and lasting. And as they stood there on that snowy evening, surrounded by love and warmth and the promise of all the years still to come, they knew that their story, which had begun with violence and fear, had become a story of hope, courage, and enduring love. The cowboy had seen the bruises she was trying to hide, had said no one would ever lay a hand on her again, and he had kept that promise. But more than that, he had given her the space to discover her own strength, to become the woman she was meant to be. And she had given him a home, a family, a purpose beyond just drifting through life. Their children grew and eventually had families of their own. The ranch continued to prosper, becoming a legacy passed down through generations. Cole and Alina grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. They faced challenges, as all couples do, but they faced them together, their bond unbreakable. In their later years, they would sit on that same porch, their hair gray and their hands weathered from decades of work, and watch their grandchildren play in the yard where their own children had once played. They would hold hands and remember that day in Copper Ridge when their paths crossed, when a cowboy with a strong sense of justice saw a woman who needed saving, and how that moment had changed both their lives forever. Alina never forgot the darkness she had escaped, but she didn't let it define her. She used her experience to help other women in similar situations, offering shelter and support through their ranch and their community. She became an advocate for women's rights, speaking out against domestic violence when few others would. Her courage inspired many, and she saved countless lives by sharing her story and showing others that escape was possible, that a better life waited on the other side of fear. Cole never regretted that decision to stay in Copper Ridge, to stand up to Martin Garrett, to risk everything for a woman he barely knew. It had led him to the greatest love of his life, to the family he had always wanted, to a purpose greater than himself. He taught his sons and grandsons that real strength wasn't about domination or violence, but about protecting those who needed protection, about standing up for what was right even when it was difficult. When Cole Brennan passed away peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1912, at the age of 70, he was surrounded by his family. Alina held his hand as his breathing slowed, and his last words were, "I love you. Thank you for the most beautiful life." Alina followed him 2 years later, having lived a full and meaningful life of 72 years. Her last words were, "I am coming, my love, wait for me." They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, under the vast New Mexico sky they had loved. Their headstone reads simply, "Cole and Alina Brennan. Together forever, love conquers all." And their story lived on, told by their children and grandchildren, a testament to the power of courage, compassion, and love. It was the story of a cowboy who saw a woman in need and refused to look away, who made a promise and kept it for the rest of his life. It was the story of a woman who found the strength to escape her nightmare and build a new dream. It was the story of two souls who found each other in the darkest of times and created light together, a light that continued to shine long after they were gone, illuminating the path for others who faced similar darkness and needed to know that hope still existed, that love could heal even the deepest wounds, and that every ending could become a new beginning if you were brave enough to take that first step toward freedom. Their legacy was not just the successful ranch or the children and grandchildren who carried on their name. Their legacy was the example they set, showing that one person standing up for another could change everything, that love rooted in respect and equality could flourish and grow, and that the scars of the past did not have to dictate the future. They proved that with courage, determination, and true partnership, it was possible to overcome even the most difficult circumstances and build a life filled with joy, purpose, and enduring love. And so their story ended where all the best love stories end. Not with a dramatic finale, but with a life well lived, a love well tended, and a family well raised, carrying forward the values and the love that had started with one simple, courageous act on a dusty street in a small Arizona town. When a cowboy saw Bruises, a woman was trying to hide, and made a promise that changed both their lives forever.